is true.
Yes, it was.
She was 67. So she was like,
88.
Yeah, 88. So I would have been 11.
That sounds right.
And I remember, how long was it before your dad relocated down here to Milledgeville?
Several years. He lived up there in their.
I don't remember that. To me, it seems like it was like the same time. But because I remember being 15 for sure, 15, and then 16 when he was down here because I was driving out to his house every once in a while.
Yeah.
So I remember being able to do that.
You were so wonderful with him, and I still appreciate it.
I remember going over there, and he would put on the Playboy channel.
That's my dad.
And he would put his cigarettes out on the bottom of his foot because he couldn't feel it.
He was showing off.
Yeah, I guess.
Right. Really?
Yeah, he had diabetes, and his feet were basically useless, I'm guessing, at this point.
Wow.
And so I remember that. I remember a couple of interesting things. I remember him looking forward to fishing, and then we found him this house where it was right next to the power plant, and the water was so hot the fish were all dead. And he would go and sit out there to fish, but there was no fish to catch. I remember that. I remember one time he accidentally turned the heat up in his house really high, and we were calling. You guys remember this? And we called, and he didn't answer. And you called again, and he didn't answer. And so we went and checked on him, and it was like hot in that house. He had like flipped it, and so he had the heat on, and he had passed out. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That was right
before.
I think that was right before he came here.
Yeah. He got in pretty bad shape, and so we moved him out here so we could take care of him.
You still think about your parents?
Every friggin' day.
I wish that your parents and Cotton Bud could have met these guys.
I feel like I could have played music with them.
Just calm down.
You naughty thing.
And so it's interesting because when I was like I had a really cool situation because I was an only child, but I also had a sister.
That's right.
And you had a cool situation because you had me most of the time, but you also had this daughter from,
That's
you know.
right.
So that must have been, because how old was Stephanie when you started dating Dad? So when would you first meet? How old was she?
A baby.
She was a little baby, right?
Baby, yeah.
So you knew her the whole time, pretty much.
When
When
we have her over to the house, she refused when somebody saw her in the yard and asked if I was her stepmother. And she just never would allow anybody to use that term. She called me her Aunt Mama.
That's cute.
And now she calls me her other mother.
So when you guys were in Macon for a law school, right, Mercer University, and then you graduated, but he was still in school, so you were doing private practice in Macon then?
Yeah.
Did you have an office space?
Yes, I did.
How'd you find that?
Probably, and I don't remember this specifically, but I had a very good friend who was a clinical psychologist, and she had another room in her office, her office building, and so I was with her for a while. We shared a secretary.
How long did you do that, do you think?
I guess for the entire time I was in private practice.
Where was I? I was a little baby. What was I doing while you were doing that? Did you guys have like someone to care for me while I mean obviously.
We had some strange folk care for you, yeah.
What do you mean?
We were desperate for somebody to watch over you. I don't know how we ran into this very old elderly couple. And when I say country, that's an understatement. Okay.
But they loved you.
But they were nice folks, and they took great care of you while we were somewhere else, and we could afford them.
What were their names?
I don't remember. Isn't that? I'm ashamed of myself, but I don't remember.
All right, another memory I had. Tell me if this is true. I remember a house with like a fireplace Did it snow in the house? Is that
Yes.
possible?
Yes.
Do I have a
Oh,
memory
yes.
of that?
It snowed that. We lived in the kitchen and the bedroom.
But this was before me. This must have been a story, right? Because when you guys had me, you were in a different place than that, the snow house.
Maybe
Right?
I just told you that.
I think I heard that story.
Yeah.
That's a story from before
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And then I remember, was there like a piano? Did we have this piano in the house when I would have been a little kid? I
Yeah.
remember.
No. One of the law sisters needs somewhere to
Oh,
put his
oh.
grand piano.
So we put it in our apartment. We
And
rented him an
the
apartment
pipes busted and
upstairs from we owned the house. And we rented him the apartment, but they didn't have enough room for the piano. So he would come down to our apartment and
What?
play the piano.
What do you mean you owned it? How did you buy a house? How did you get the money to buy a house?
That's an excellent question.
we took money from the settlement from the car wreck
Really?
and put that
Down
in
payment?
the house, yeah.
And did you make money when you sold it?
No, we actually lost money, but we were ready to get out of there.
Huh. Why?
It needed a lot of work, and we could not afford to do what needed to be done to it.
Huh. And then I also remember, like right before we moved from Macon, I had a friend, I don't remember her name, and we were sitting together outside somewhere on our like big wheels or tricycles or something, and I remember talking about how I was leaving. Is that, and then I remember daycare where I sat down on an anthill and had ants get all over me, and they stripped me down and sprayed me with a water hose to get the ants off. What was that
I
place?
don't remember it.
You remember that place
Remember that at all.
we had him?
Yeah,
I remember. I don't remember the name, but
yeah, and then for a while, because I told you guys that story, and I was a kid, of course. Look, if I had a kid that sat down covered in fire ants, you'd take their clothes off and spray them down. But I remember feeling embarrassed because I was naked, in front of like all my preschool friends. And then we would drive by there, and you would say, Nana, you would say, to give them raspberries, and we would go every time we drive by there. I remember that. But I was little. I remember doing
yeah,
that.
you must have been.
I also have an early memory of getting my first knife, which is a really beautiful little knife with a ship carved in the handle, and convincing you guys, begging you guys, we got it at some sort of farmer's market or some sort of fair, convincing you guys to let me play with it in the back seat because I was drinking milk or orange juice out of this little thing, and you guys were okay, and you gave it to me, and I remember just shoving that thing into my thumb at one point and being like, how do I not let them know that this happened? But there's blood just like coming down. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Your mother was not happy with me because she didn't think you were old enough for the knife.
Well, that's probably right.
It's like when you got thrown out of the go-kart.
Well, that one wasn't my fault.
Wait, what was the go-kart story?
That one wasn't my fault.
That
That one, they got me a go-kart, which I used for a long time, which I loved. Granddaddy's younger brother, Robbie, was driving me around. He must have been, how old? Teenager?
Teenager, yeah.
And he took a sharp turn, because go-karts, they have very tight steering, and he turned it, and I just flew right out, I guess.
Out to the pavement.
I was furious for years.
You know, we got Beckett one.
And him primarily.
I know. We got Beckett a go-kart with a roll bar out at Lookout. And I took a special thing and behind the tractor, and I made a path. First day out there, he flipped that thing, rolled it like this, and it had a roll bar. And luckily, he did. I never thought it was going to roll, but he did what you're supposed to do. You keep your hands on the steering wheel. You don't like this, because then it gets rolled on. So he did this, and he didn't get hurt at all, except shaken up. And that was the end of the go-kart.
Yeah, I'm sure.
For sure. So I think I've got the order right. I think I've got it. You got undergrad, grad school. So I have a question. While Granddaddy was in Vietnam, 17, 18 years old, what were you doing at that time? You were in school, high school.
Yeah.
You were a little bit younger
A year
lady.
younger. Yeah.
A year younger. But were you a part of did you ever a part of like the counterculture, the hippie movement? What?
I considered myself a hippie at one point. I wasn't really.
Yeah.
But I considered myself one.
What kind of music did you like during that time period, like the 70s? No, the 60s. But late 60s, early 70s.
Whatever was popular. I'm trying to think.
You don't remember?
Mumble rap.
Not mumble rap.
Yeah.
Did you like, I don't know.
The Beatles.
Yeah, everybody. I'm trying to think if, like hippie music. I don't know. I'm blanking on.
Did people dress weirdly in the 60s?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
You know, when I was coming home from Vietnam, they strongly advised us to put civilian clothes on when we got off the plane. You didn't want to be in your uniform.
Yeah.
Because of the protesters.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's luckily I think we've come to see the error in our ways during that time period. At least
We keep doing it.
No, not the war, but how we treat our soldiers.
Oh.
I agree with you. 36 days in the office and Biden bombed Syria. Whatever.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, so and then Declan asked Granddaddy, but we haven't asked you. So when I met Zoe, I was in college, and then I went to Ireland, and I came back, and then we started dating. What did you think about me jetting off to New York and stuff?
Well, I thought it was wonderful for you. But I tell you what, when you came back from Ireland, I knew your heart was gone. I knew it was taken.
Really?
The way you talked about this girl, she was a girl at the time. And then when she'd call, you should have seen you.
I disappeared into my room. I remember that.
Yeah.
I can't believe the phone bills at the time, because back then it mattered how long you talked on the phone. Remember, like now it doesn't matter. You just, but back then I remember to New York was a lot.
We knew your heart was gone.
And then she came down. Dad, do you remember the first time she came here and you were making a salad and you cut off the tip of your finger with a knife while you're making the salad? You just chopped right into your finger. And
you learned it from him.
You bled all over everything. And then you wrapped it in, like, you should hear Zoe tell the story. It's hilarious. And the way she tells it. And in her story, and I believe this is probably accurate, although I don't remember it, but I believe her. She said you just grabbed like the dirty rag sitting on the corner, you know, and just like doing this, like the first thing that you saw. And she was like,
well, someday I'd like to hear her first impressions of us. I mean, we loved her from the very beginning.
Yeah, no, she loved you guys. There was definitely I would say, a culture shock just being here. I mean, I was telling the story earlier when she went to walk. She wanted to go outside and walk, and it was pitch black dark, and she's very, very unaccustomed in New York. There is no pitch black dark. There's nowhere in the city. In the middle of Central Park, there's still light. It's the light pollution. And she couldn't believe, she couldn't see anything. She freaked out. She got like 50 yards down the road and turned around and came back.
Yeah, I remember.
She was like, why is it so dark?
So wasn't she in Ireland though for a time though? Wouldn't she be used to pitch black dark?
She spent most of her time in Dublin probably. She didn't really walk around outside too much. But anyway, so maybe we can do more of these conversations, and we'll think about some more questions later. But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here is your director's speech.
Thanks. Oh wow.